Okay, anybody not ready? Yeah. All right, good afternoon. I'm Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gualtieri, and we're here this afternoon to let you know about an incident that happened early this morning up off Terrace View Lane in Clearwater, which is off McMullen Booth Road, just north of Drew Street. And I'm going to run through just a brief series of events that occurred this morning. At about 1 o'clock this morning, the Clearwater Police Department responded to 1319 North McMullen Booth Road, which is a small apartment complex just north of Ruth Eckerd Hall off to the east side of McMullen Booth. That's an apartment complex where Robert Alcade, A-L-C-A-D-E, who's a white male, date of birth 8/6 of 84. It's where he lived. A person in that apartment complex had noticed him acting irrationally. He was walking around in the apartment complex talking to himself. He was talking about somebody was after him, that somebody was going to come and kill him. A Clearwater police officer responded, determined that Alcade did not meet criteria for an involuntary examination under the Baker Act, and he hadn't committed any crimes, even though the officer observed his behavior to be somewhat irrational, but didn't rise to the level for taking him into custody for, again, any offense or under the Baker Act. The officer left. At about 2:10 this morning, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office received a call to 3063 Terrace View Lane. And this is the home of Heather and Stephen Iosa, and they have lived at this location for about the last 4 months. The Iosas went to bed around midnight. They were awakened at about 2:10 this morning with Alcade standing in the doorway of their bedroom in their home. The Iosas don't know Alcade. He entered the home through the front window on the north side of the residence by breaking out the window and then entering in through that broken window. Heather Iosa immediately told her husband to call 911. At that point, Alcade, which is kind of puzzling, but then given the totality of the circumstances here and his irrational behavior, told them that he had already called 911 because somebody was trying to kill him. At that point, his behavior became even more bizarre and more irrational as he crouched down in a corner, was moving about in the bedroom, and then began reaching up as he was trying to climb the walls in their bedroom. He then began taking stuff off the shelves, throwing stuff around the house, damaging, destroying things, and just running amok within the residence. The Iosas went outside, and when they went outside into the back or the south side of the residence, Steve Iosa had a .22 caliber rifle that he kept under the bed for personal protection. The gun wasn't loaded, and he took it outside with him and tried to load the firearm, but he had trouble loading it and was unable to get around in the chamber. The gun was malfunctioning. In addition to the .22 caliber rifle, the Iosas also kept a machete under the bed. Stephen Iosa was able to get back into the house, and he was able to retrieve the machete. When he came back out into the backyard, Alcade also came into the backyard and physically engaged his wife, Heather Iosa, and tackled her to the ground. There's a very, very violent struggle at this point with Alcade on top of Heather Iosa, and there was a lot of fighting going on, active fighting, brawling going on. And because Stephen Iosa was concerned for the safety of his wife at that point, because she was being attacked by this guy, he, in defense of his wife, took the machete and began striking Alcade on the legs with a machete. And at that point, the intensity of the fighting actually got worse. It did not stop him from resisting, didn't stop him from fighting, even though he now had these big, open, gaping wounds and gashes all over his legs. He fought back, and as I said, the struggle intensified, and Alcade continued to receive strikes on his legs by Stephen. At one point during the fight, again, I told you that the firearm, the .22 caliber rifle, was inoperable, but at one point Alcade took possession of the rifle, and he was holding it kind of one hand on the stock, one hand on the barrel, so he had it up here over his head. He didn't know it wasn't loaded, and he didn't know it was inoperable, but a fight ensued over the rifle. About that point is when deputies arrived on the scene. They were able to pull the rifle away from Alcade. Again, he was holding on to it with one hand on the barrel and one hand on the stock of it, so he didn't have his hand on the trigger, and again, the gun at that point, although they didn't know that, wasn't loaded. As the deputies were able to get the rifle away from him, he continued to fight, continued to struggle. They deployed an electronic control device, the taser device, and it really had no effect on Al-Qaeda at all. And this happens. And sometimes people are under the mistaken impression that a taser, an electronic control device, is something that always has effect, and it doesn't. Some people, it doesn't faze them at all when they get hit with the probes from the taser device. Again, the struggle ensued. There was a lot of battling, a lot of blood. It was a very, very bloody scene because of the machete strikes. And after about 6 times of deploying the taser, they were finally able to get some reaction out of Al-Qaeda where they were able to get him handcuffed. And at that point, Pinellas County EMS was on scene. They administered medication to Al-Qaeda that was able to calm him down. And they were finally able to get him handcuffed and put on a backboard and taken to an ambulance. As I said, it was a very bloody scene. The lacerations were very, very extensive up and down Al-Qaeda's legs, and EMS decided to transport him to Bayfront Medical Center because of the extent of his injuries. It was a ground transport. It was not an air transport. And while en route from that residence up in North Clearwater, in the ambulance to Bayfront, as Al-Qaeda stopped breathing, EMS diverted to Northside Hospital in St. Petersburg. Emergency room personnel worked on him, but he was pronounced deceased at Northside Hospital. Al-Qaeda has an extensive criminal history dating back about 19 years. He was most recently released from the Florida Department of Corrections, the state prison system, in March of this year after serving over 2 years on a burglary charge. According to Al-Qaeda's father, who lives in Clearwater, Al-Qaeda was heavily using drugs. We did conduct a search of the apartment. We didn't find any drugs in the apartment. We did find a crack pipe and some other paraphernalia. According to his father, because of the slippery slope that he was on, it was a matter of time before he either went back to prison or was dead. So he's dead. And a very unfortunate situation. What is fortunate about it is that neither Heather or Stephen were injured. They're safe, and the investigation is continuing. We're waiting on results from the autopsy with the medical examiner's office. Of course, they'll take some time with toxicology results, et cetera. We won't have those for a period of time, but we're continuing the investigation. So that's what we know now. As always in these cases, it's fluid, it's unfolding. But I think that pretty much gives you the idea of what happened out there.
Heather and Stephen, were they in the home alone? Did they have children or other family members there?
No children. They were in the home alone. They just moved into that home about in the last 4 months. They said they went to bed around midnight, were awakened when Al-Qaeda broke into their house and stood in their bedroom.
Any idea why he may have chosen that house?
No idea as to why that particular house. I can tell you that, from what it looks like right now, and I want to stress that, as I always do in these, it's preliminary. It's an ongoing investigation. But I believe right now, it looks like it was random. There was no rhyme or reason. There is no indication of any familiarity between Al-Qaeda and the IOSAs whatsoever. No indication there's any targeting, and it was opportunity, perhaps. He may have tried, and again, we're still trying to determine, he may have tried to get into another house in the neighborhood first. There was, to the north of the apartment complex where he lives, early this morning, somebody found some identification to the north that belonged to Al-Qaeda. Now, we don't know whether this identification was dropped there earlier this morning or in the last couple of days, but it does appear that Al-Qaeda was roaming around the neighborhood. So we're, again, continuing the investigation. We're following it up, looking to talk to people. We're looking for video, a variety of things that may give us some indication. But I think it was random, and that he was just acting irrationally, high on drugs, paranoia, thought he was being followed, thought these people were going to kill him. No indication that any of these people exist. And this was just somebody who, unfortunately, decided to commit this random act.
We saw someone pulling up to the house about an hour ago that looked like they were there to clean up the scene. So when you say it was a bloody situation,
Well, yeah, I said, it was an extremely bloody situation, yes. I mean, the man his legs were all hacked up with a machete, so, yeah, it was extremely bloody situation, yes.
How are the homeowners doing? I mean, it's gotta be a really,
Well, as you can imagine, they're, upset. They're doing as well as could be expected under the circumstances. They were asleep last night and this guy broke into their house and wreaked havoc, and unfortunately, they had to protect themselves from being attacked by this guy. And they did what they had to do under the circumstances with the best thing they had, and the rifle didn't work, so it was the machete that they used to protect themselves.
How far away from the apartment where he was to the house? Did he travel, did he travel on foot?
It was on foot, yeah. There's no indication of anything other than on foot. I'd say it's no more than a mile. So it would be to the north and to the east. So he had to cross McMullen Booth Road, and then as he came to the south over on the west side. There was some contact yesterday between Alcade and a sheriff's deputy in Safety Harbor. He had left a rental car over there, and now being reported to us now is there was a tow truck driver that had also encountered him yesterday and observed some irrational behavior on his part. So it looks like he was probably walking around the neighborhood and doing a number of things in that North Clearwater Safety Harbor area for the last couple of days, and acting very irrationally, thinking that people were out to get him, thinking that he was being followed, thinking he was going to be killed, which is very characteristic of people that are hallucinating and taking an inordinate amount of narcotics and different drugs, and that's consistent with what his father said, is that since he got out of prison back in March, that he was seriously abusing drugs and was going down this path, unfortunately, to what his father characterized as either being dead or going back to prison.
Are you guys going to talk to the board recorder, Clearwater PD, to find out if there's more to that interaction that happened earlier?
Yeah, we're in the process of doing that now, but we already have talked to them, but we'll be talking to them further, yes.
you have to meet specific criteria for a Baker Act, so him just acting irrational is not enough.
No. You have to be a danger to yourself or to others, and you have to present that, and there's an evaluation criteria that's applied to it, and if somebody doesn't meet that criteria, then you can't act.
You can't arrest him if he's not breaking the law.
Well, of course.
Okay.
I don't think you,
can't hold him, I guess, is what I'm saying, because it seems like this is a horrific situation, but he's run into law enforcement a few times, but
Right.
there's
Well-
really no reason to keep him or hold him.
well, right, if somebody hasn't committed a crime, they're not breaking the law, there's nothing you do about it. And if you don't meet the criteria for the Baker Act, then there's nothing you can do about it. So, it's one of those things. We can't act and certainly can't take somebody into custody unless they've committed a crime or they meet the involuntary examination criteria under the Baker Act.
Anything that could have been done differently to prevent this?
Not that I see.
Could you spell IOSA?
Sure. It's AIOSA, IOSA, so the A is silent. Heather and Stephen, it's STEVEN.
Who's Alcade's first name?
Robert,
And how does the suspect spell his last
ALCADE,
name?
Alcade.
In the apartment complex, was there a name for it, or?
And if there is a name to it, I don't know what it is. It's one of the small complexes just north of Ruth Eckerd Hall on the east side of McMullen Booth. It's one of the small ones up there.
Can you give me the address again?
Sure, it's 1319 North McMullen Booth Road, Clearwater.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay, all right, thanks.